Welcome back to this special episode of Behind the Caution Tape. I'm your host, CrashLit, and today I am really excited for the special guest that we have on today. Rob Parker, 2023 National Association of Black Journalists Hall of Fame inductee. My former professor at USC, took his sports writing class, one of my favorite classes, co-host of The Odd Couple, founder of MLBBro.com, and a graduate of both Yale and Southern Connecticut State. And Rob is someone who's been an amazing teacher, mentor, and friend of me, and someone who I really admire because how much he's just always giving back to students. Be sure to follow him on Instagram at Rob Parker, MLB Bro. And Rob, how are you doing today?
Crash, I'm good. I wish I graduated from Yale, but Southern Connecticut and Columbia, still Ivy League, but we're close. But we're good.
Why did I get that one wrong? But knew it was one of them, so my apologies on that.
It's all good. But no, man, great to see you. Great to for the invite, man. I'm very proud of you, what you're doing, and one of my students. You were really a good student in my class and good writer, and you really got it. So I'm proud of you, Crash. Very proud.
Thank you, Rob. Before we go any further, be sure to subscribe to this podcast. And we're on Apple, Spotify for audio, as well as other sites. And subscribe to my YouTube channel at CrashLit if you want to see the video version of this podcast. And Rob, my first question that I do want to ask you is, can you talk about what made you decide that early on in your career and life that you wanted to be a sports writer?
You know, it was like, I was like most kids growing up. I grew up in New York City, and I wanted to be a baseball player. That was my love. I wasn't a basketball or football. I played them, but not with the love that I had for baseball. And so, you know, pretty early on, I realized, Crash, I just wasn't that good. You know what I mean? I was like, yeah, I want to be a major league player, but I'm not that good, and I'm not going to make it. So I thought to myself, well, what could I do to kind of stay around sports, still be involved? And there was a TV show on in New York at the time that came on reruns called The Odd Couple. And Oscar Madison was one of the characters in the show. And he was a sports writer, and he wrote for the New York Herald and had a column in the newspaper. And boom, the light went off. I said, that's what I want to do. I want to be a sports writer, have my own column in the newspaper if I don't make it in baseball. And that kind of like laid the groundwork for me. And from there, teachers always told me that I was a good writer and stuff. In fact, I had a teacher in second grade. Her name was Miss Noble. So think about this, Crash. In second grade, you're like 7 years old. And I still remember the day she pulled me aside from the rest of the class and she said, Robert, when you grow up, you should be a writer. You're an excellent writer. So I took that, my love of sports, this TV show called The Odd Couple, and decided that was going to be my life path.
And throughout your career, this is something that's been really admirable, especially as I've learned about you just through our interactions over the year, as well as I was preparing for this interview today, is you've broken the color barrier at several newspapers and stations that you've worked at along throughout your career, most notably the Detroit Free Press in 1993. What has that meant to you that you've been able to help pave the way for future African-American journalists and journalists of color to get more opportunities in this industry?
It means a lot. And that job to this day still ranks as the best job and the most impactful job I ever had, which was being the first Black sports columnist at the Detroit Free Press. And Crash, when they hired me, the newspaper was 161 years old, and they had never had a Black sports columnist. And the Free Press back in those days were a top 10 newspaper. It was a big deal. I was only 29 years old. Back then, getting a column before you even in your 30s was unheard of. So I hold it near and dear to my heart. And the people of Detroit embraced me, even though I was, from New York, not from Detroit. And they always stopped me and told me with great pride that I represented Detroit well, represented the city and the people. And so I always have a special place in my heart for Detroit and the Free Press.
You were inducted into the National Association of Black Journalists Hall of Fame in 2023. And then what did that accomplishment mean to you, kind of continuing on just just breaking the color barrier at several of your stops and just everything you've accomplished throughout your career?
Again, there's nothing like being recognized by your own people, your peers, and to be inducted. I was 59 at the time, young, so I wasn't even 60 years old. Um, I was unanimously voted in, which is an incredible honor. It's really hard for everybody to be on board. And as much as my career Crash, speaks for itself, and it does. I'm not going to sit here and act like I didn't do anything over these last 40 years. The thing I think I was inducted into the Hall of Fame for was my mentorship to so many people, and that's a big part. I think that's why I've been put on this planet, is to help other people with their dreams and their goals. And I think it's for that reason that I'm in the Hall of Fame, because I have gone out of my way to try to help as many people as I can. And you might say, well, where's that come from? I was a kid. I was 22 years old. I was hired at the Daily News in New York at the time. It was the largest paper in the country. And a lot of people helped me along the way. So I said, if I ever get into a position where I can help other people, young writers and whatnot, I'm going to do the same thing. And that's really how I got on this path of becoming a mentor. And right now, in these last, I guess, 30 years, I've mentored over 100 people. So it's special to me.
Well, like I said, kind of at the top of this piece, that's something I really admire about you, especially you being my former teacher, is just how much, not just for me, but just everyone that I took your class with, just how much you've given back and just how much you've gone out of your way to always be available for us and answer questions about us and then invite us to just notable events in your life. And I'm going to ask you about that right now. Your most recent accomplishment was Southern Connecticut State named their football press box after you. And it was really meaningful to get to that. You invited me to the celebration in Los Angeles at Fox Sports Radio to just honor you and really, share that moment with you. But what did that mean for you just to have your undergraduate alma mater put your name on their press box?
Crash, another just unbelievable. I had to pinch myself, literally. The idea, and as it's going on and you hear about it and you have expectations, but you really don't, it doesn't sink in until you're standing in front of the football press box, on the field, in the center of the field, and they pull this curtain off and you see your name and you can't believe how big it is and how much it stands out and how, it's going to be there forever. So it's kind of like jaw dropping. I was really in awe. I've always had a relationship with my school. I've started scholarships for the best sports writer for the school paper. Years ago, I've always gone back to the school and spoken to the journalism department and the kids and whatnot. And it was a very special moment. They treated my family so well. Again, me and the university have a really good relationship for a long time. So this wasn't just, Johnny come lately. A couple of years out of college, they actually put me in a TV commercial that they used to run about graduating from Southern. So they identified me pretty early on, not 25 years later, but early on in my career, they included me in that commercial, and that stuck with me about Southern Connecticut. So I had a great time there, 3.5 years, graduated early, but accomplished a lot. And I went there with the idea, Crash, of being a reporter and learning how to be a reporter. And when I left, I had been trained to go get a job as a reporter. I went in with the idea of what it was like to be a reporter, what it took, but I actually left with all the skill set and everything. And when I got out of Southern Connecticut, I had 5 job offers to choose from, and that's launched my career.
It was really just, amazing to just hear about that when you invited me personally. That really meant a lot to me. And so it's really like, congratulations again. I know it's been almost like 8 months now since we were celebrating back in
Yeah.
LA, but still, just want to say congrats again for that.
No, I appreciate that. And I think it's important, in life, always remember this, Crash. We all take a lot of L's in life. It's a rough road. So when you get a few wins in life, always celebrate them. Do not take them for granted. And that's why, despite having a party in Connecticut after the event, I still had a party for my friends in LA, including you, because I want to share that with you. I want to inspire you. I want you to see, what it looks like to have these things done and how it's obtainable for anybody. I always look at it. If I can do all these things, I'm telling you, anybody else can do it, because I was just a kid growing up in New York with these big dreams, and that's it. I had nobody in my corner. Nobody was going to put me on, or some relative or dad who already had the big job and they were just going to put their son in place. I didn't have any of that.
Absolutely. And you've also, in addition to everything you've done, you've also had a few entrepreneurial ventures throughout your career, one of which is MLBbro.com, a site dedicated to covering black and brown MLB players. Can you talk about what made you want to shed more of a light on them and how you've grown that mission?
Yeah, and that was, as you know, Crash, baseball is my love. I mean, I love the NBA, NFL, but number one is baseball. And I just thought there was a lack of coverage, and not just your basic home runs and RBIs and game totals, but just who are some of these black players? What have they accomplished? How did they get here? And that's where I came up with the idea of MLB Bro. And it's the same way. It's nothing like sinister behind it of covering black players. It's the same way that the Japanese media cover Shohei Ohtani, right? They want to know about Shohei Ohtani, and the people of Japan want to know about him. Or ESPN Deportes, where it's a Spanish-speaking, Spanish language network, right? So they speak to Spanish players who play Major League Baseball. So MLB Bro is kind of the same exact thing. And the response from the players has been tremendous. Major League Baseball monitored our site the first 2 years. They liked what we were doing. We have a partnership. We're in year 4 of our partnership with Major League Baseball, which is incredible. Major League Baseball has never partnered with anybody for their content like they've done with us. Obviously, they know me. I've covered Major League Baseball for 40 years. That helped, but they like the concept and the idea. And my goal, along with telling the story present and past of black baseball players, is also developing the next generation of black baseball writers and broadcasters. So, Crash, we started with 14 people 6 years ago. We now have 70 people. If you go to MLBbro.com and hit that staff box, you'll see 70 pictures of people who now contribute to the site. The growth is unbelievable. I get emails almost every other day from college students who say, "Hey, Rob, I want you to teach me how to cover baseball." It's a beautiful thing. It really is.
You've talked about baseball as your first love. You've been covering it for over 40 years. As someone who took your class, I mean, it's just fair that a lot of our assignments were about baseball to the extent that they could be. Can you recall some of your favorite moments covering the MLB?
Yeah, the biggest one is my first World Series, 1986. I'm 22 years old. Mets and Red Sox, which is a classic World Series that went 7 games. And in Game 6, the Mets came back. They were down to their final strike on 3 straight players before Mookie Wilson hit a ground ball to Bill Buckner that went through his legs. The Mets won Game 6, forced to Game 7. I was there for that. It was an incredible moment. And then the Mets won the next game in Game 7 to clinch a World Series, their first since 1969. So that was incredible. And probably the biggest one of all was covering a World Series at that age and then having such spectacular events happen in it. So it was great. It was great. I can't believe that was 40 years ago.
You've also covered numerous other sports, especially the NFL and NBA. What are some of your favorite moments covering sports that aren't baseball?
In the NBA, it was Michael Jordan's shot over Craig Elo to win a 5-game series against the Cavaliers. I was sitting courtside, center court, right where they inbounded the ball. I saw it as clear as the nose on my face. It was incredible, and it was the start of Michael Jordan, and that they advanced in that round, but then got knocked out in the next round. But still, it was the start of it, and I saw Michael Jordan very up close. And during that time, I was covering Michael Jordan. I even covered Michael Jordan's first. I just want to say this: first baseball game in Florida. So I covered him as an NBA player, and then I also was there for his first baseball game in Florida. But Michael Jordan was great. I covered so many postseason games sitting up. This is when the commissioner, David Stern, moved all the writers from up top in the press area all the way down to the floor, and we got great views. I was there when Reggie Miller scored those, 9 points in 8 seconds or whatever it was at Madison Square Garden. I covered that game. So many great games. The NFL, saw some Brett Favre, magical moments. Aaron Rodgers. I was a columnist covering the Lions. The Lions didn't do a lot of winning during that time, but I saw a lot. Saw that didn't see a lot of wins during that time, but covered a number of world Super Bowls as well. So all the sports, and we leave out the National Hockey League. Of course, Detroit is hockey town. So I covered the Stanley Cup Finals a number of times when the Red Wings won the Stanley Cup.
You did mention covering the Detroit Lions when they weren't winning very well, and it kind of led me into my next point, which is you've had your fair share of controversies throughout your career.
Who, me? Who, me?
And the one that immediately comes to mind that I think that you've talked about is your question to Rod Marinelli about if you wish his daughter had married a better defensive coordinator. And I know you meant it in a more kind of humorous, lighter note, like you explained. But just from that, what did you learn about yourself from just having to navigate moments where you kind of found yourself in a bit of hot water?
Yeah, as a columnist for the Detroit News, I was really trying to see if he might have a colorful quote. I had earlier in that press conference hammered him about what had gone on, how bad it was. And then I said, kind of near the end of the press conference, on a lighter note, that is what I said. If you could go, anybody who's ever seen the video, go look and see. On a lighter note, do you wish your daughter would have married a better defensive coordinator? I was hoping he'd say, yeah, that would have helped today, stopping the Saints, or yeah, I was hoping that, she married Buddy Ryan, who was a really great defensive coordinator who helped the Bears win the Super Bowl, but she didn't think he was cute, or something glib or funny or something like that. And it just, I guess when you're 0-15, and so he really didn't say that much then. It was really, the whole story really kind of went off the rails once Terry Bradshaw and the guys on Fox kind of attacked me. Then all of a sudden it became a firestorm. It wasn't a firestorm in Detroit or originally with Rod Marinelli. He didn't yell at me or anything. He just kind of looked and goes, yeah, all right, whatever. That was it. So I thought I was in the clear. Okay, he didn't like it, but I didn't think it was the end of the world. And then ESPN, I was working for them and locally. The paper was upset with me over the question. ESPN told me that they watched the whole press conference. They didn't have any issues with me. They didn't think I was out of line. So and the paper they didn't back me. They kind of made a big stink over it. So I wound up resigning from the paper. I just felt like they should have had my back over a guy who's 0-15, who's going to wind up getting fired after the season. Like what are they standing on while ESPN is saying you're good to go? And I looked at ESPN as my future, not the Detroit News at that time. So I just, rather than, go through some anguish, just said, no, I'll just get a buyout and I'll leave. And that's what I did.
And speaking of ESPN, I do want to ask you about debating notable personalities that a lot of people see on TV, like Stephen A. Smith and Skip Bayless. What was it like to debate and host shows with those guys?
It was great. I mean, that started the kind of debate genre, and it was great. First, I started working with Skip on Cold Pizza. It was a segment that was a part of that show called First and 10, and we would debate 10 topics. And then it kind of morphed into First Take, and I was a part of that for a number of years, enjoyed every moment of it. And then when Skip moved on to Undisputed at Fox, I joined Skip there in Los Angeles to be a part of that show. So I was on 3 debate shows with Skip mostly. And Stephen A. and I go way back. I helped mentor him when he first started. I met him in 1992. We're friends. It's not just a professional relationship. I'm also the godfather to one of his daughters. So we have a real friendship, and I've seen him blossom. But I was there in the very beginning when he just wanted to be a sports writer, and I used to read his clips from the newspaper back then and give him advice on how to tighten up his writing and how to get better at writing and whatnot. So it's to see him where he is at the top of our profession food chain is very satisfying. But it's all about him and his talent. I just had a small part in kind of helping him early on find his way.
I do want to ask you about a recent interview you did with Stephen A. a few months ago when you said that Bill Belichick did not deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. And I listened to that whole interview where even he thought you were crazy. I'm not trying to debate it, but what was that interview like where even him, for how extreme his takes are perceived by a lot of viewers, just what was that like for you to even, I'm not saying this is your goal, but to even seemingly kind of one up him in that regard?
Hey, it was a battle royale. I mean, we went back and forth. He didn't want to hear what I was saying. And my point was, Bill Belichick's been involved in too many cheating scandals. And I don't have a problem with writers saying, nope, not first ballot. You might eventually get in, but we're going to kind of punish you. I think the same thing should happen to Tom Brady. Like, Tom Brady was suspended by the league. Tom Brady's benefited from all the cheating that the Patriots did. I don't have an issue if they were to also make Brady wait. Look at Robert Kraft, own a team that won 6 Super Bowls. He's not in the Pro Football Hall of Fame either. I think that says something.
Absolutely. And I just really want to ask about that because it was really just a fun interview to listen to where Stephen A. calls you. It's like, Rob, I love you, man, but you're crazy.
I know. That's always his thing. He always had love for me, but he's like, you're off the handle. I knew that there was some wild take. I look, and of course your name was attached to it, so I knew it. And so I had to get you on. So we're always going at it. We used to do it locally in Detroit on the local news, like debate back in those days, even before like Cold Pizza and whatnot. So it was always like a give and take with me and him. And we don't always agree, but we always have a good time in debating our answers and whatnot.
It definitely did seem like it during that interview. And I do want to ask you about what your current radio show you do, The Odd Couple, which you first hosted with Chris Broussard and now Kelvin Washington, where you also do, I've seen your clips on social media where your takes can be a bit extreme at times. But what's it like hosting that show with those guys?
A fun show. The Odd Couple, again, going back to my childhood, right? I told you about how I got involved, interested in being a sports writer from watching that TV show, old 70s sitcom. But great show. Chris and I had a great dynamic, great chemistry, 2 journalists, who have mad respect for each other. That's a big thing. A lot of guys on radio and whatnot, they don't really respect their co-host, and it brings down the entire show. Because if you don't have respect for your host, how are the listeners going to respect them, right? No good. So Chris and I really had a really good thing going for 6 years. And then his family dynamics changed and his kids moved out, graduated from college. And it was just him and his wife, empty nesters, and they wanted to spend more time together. And he was on the East Coast, so he'd have to work 7 to 10. So he called me up and was like, he had to let the radio show go And we've talked about it since. I mean, he misses the show and what we were able to put together, but it was a good show. And me and Kelvin are different. We're odd couples as well. He's a lot younger than me. He's married, 3 kids. I'm divorced. I don't have any kids. And so it's a different dynamic. He brings a little more youth and entertaining, and energy to the show. And the show is doing really well. As you said, you see the clips. I mean, we get a lot of views on a lot of stuff. So The Odd Couple is alive and well. In September, we start our 9th year of this franchise, The Odd Couple. And it's funny, I thought when Chris left and I was getting Kelvin, I thought maybe the bosses would want to change the name of the show. You know what I mean? And they were like, no, The Odd Couple is really a great brand. Advertisers know it. They love it. Fans love it. So we just keep rolling. Said as long as you're on the show, it'll always be called The Odd Couple. So I was that meant a lot to me.
Well, it's like a really great show, and definitely love your clips. I think the one I've told you my favorite one was the one about John Thibodeau. I don't care if they call you Mr. Tibbs. I want you Mr. Out. Guess that one kind of did pay off for the Knicks, even if they didn't hire the coach you were hoping for.
Right, but I was right on Tibbs. What did I say? That Tibbs should be fired. And after they lost to the Pacers last year. Yeah, I'm always trying to be a little creative. And doing radio, that's where you want to be. You want to have moments, set something up, have people remember that clip or that the way you laid it out. So I think that it reached you and a lot of other people because it did really well.
And in terms of actually getting stuff to kind of stay with people and just how you, I guess, as a writer, how have you brought that to the classes that you teach at USC? Since this is a USC podcast, I do have to ask you about just your experience of what it's been like to teach at USC and just pass on all your knowledge to your students in a more traditional classroom setting.
I absolutely, this is 9 years I've taught at USC. I love every minute of it. Can't get over how bright and energetic and determined a lot of the students are. And I see yourself and so many others. Matter of fact, I was at MLB Network just last week and had lunch with 2 former USC grads who I taught. So I was very proud of them. I just try to make it as real, and I'm not knocking professors who weren't in the business. But Crash, it's just a little different when you're taught by a working journalist, somebody who's still out there every day. It wasn't like Rob, had a career 25 years ago and hasn't been in a newsroom or hasn't been on TV or hasn't had a radio show. I'm still doing all those things every day, taking that knowledge, bringing it to USC and feeding it to the students as to what it's like to do it today, right now. And I'm living proof. So the students use me for my knowledge, info. I can't get over how many students who have graduated, moved on, who call me or want to have lunch or get together or let me know what's going on in their lives or careers. I was in Cincinnati last week. Gabby was one of my students. She's a sports reporter at a local station in Cincinnati. I wound up having lunch with Gabby and stuff like that. So when I go around the country and I get to do that, it's a great feeling. It's amazing. And to see people, in their new professions and their jobs, doing their thing is great.
Well, that's what I really did like about your classes. You brought your real world experience that you're still out, and the fact you're still out there today to the classroom. And that's what really made me excited when I found out that you were teaching the sports reporting class that I took. Because I think when I signed up, they hadn't determined who the professor was. But once I saw Rob Parker, I'm like, let's go.
Let's do it. And I remember, the thing I remember the most about you is how well you wrote leads and buttoned up your stories. You're a really good writer. I'm not saying it because I'm on your podcast. I'm being honest. You really got the grasp of what stories, what was the story we're looking for, and then being able to put it out there. So I hope I helped you in learning to write leads and be an even better writer, but you're a really good writer.
You absolutely did. Thank you again for everything with just teaching an amazing class. A couple more questions before I let you go, Rob. I do want to ask you something I ask everyone who comes on Behind the Caution Tape. What's the best advice that you've ever received throughout your life?
Don't cheat yourself. So you want to be something, you got to work hard at it. Anybody you see who's doing really well or at the top of their profession, they didn't get lucky. They had to put in work. So when I say don't cheat yourself, if you really want to be the best at what you're doing, put the work in. Don't have regrets later on. You see the gray hair I have? I don't go back and go, man, I would have worked harder 40 years ago when I started my career. I know I've poured everything I have into this career, and that's why I've been able to last for 40 years, where I've seen so many others come and go in the business, right? They can't or aren't able to sustain a career. So don't cheat yourself. Work as hard as you can, to try to reach your goals.
And finally, Rob, I do want to ask you, what advice do you have for anyone out there who's trying to make it as a sports reporter, sports writer, or sports journalist?
The idea is to, obviously, if you're in college, go work at the newspaper, the radio station, the TV, whatever. You got to get involved. You just can't go to USC Edinburgh, get a degree, and you've never worked at any of the student-run operations in the business. And then when you're ready to get out and you put together your clips or your reel or whatever, you got to be diligent. You got to try to make your own way. No one's going to knock on your door and say, hey, Crash, here's your dream job I've been waiting to give you now that you're out of school. It doesn't work like that. So you got to be willing to put the work in. You got to be willing to make your own way, and be ready. And I got this news for you. Linda Cohn from ESPN is retiring. She's did the most sports centers, right? Broadcast. But Linda Cohn's not alone. In the next 5 years, there will be a total overhaul of the sports media landscape. There will be so many jobs. There's so many people on the verge of retirement that came up when I did. You know what I mean? Including myself. I think Dan Patrick will probably be retired by that time. Maybe Colin Cowherd. There's a lot of people. Tony Kornheiser, Mike Wilbon. I can go on and on and on about that. Baseball jobs, football announcers. Be ready. Be ready in 5 years. Be ready, because there will be openings for as this business turns over completely. And I believe it's going to happen.
Rob Parker, thank you so much for joining me here on Behind the Caution Tape. It was such a pleasure to get to interview you, and I always enjoy all of our conversations, no matter what, in what setting or in what capacity they occur in.
No doubt. And of course, we've gone out to eat a few times. Let's do it again, Crash, the next time you're in LA, okay?
I'll definitely let you know when that is. So that's going to do it for us here today on Behind the Caution Tape. Big thanks to Rob Parker for joining me today. Show him some love on social media and follow him at Rob Parker, MLB Bro on Instagram. Follow me at CrashLit. I'll see you all soon for a brand new episode of Behind the Caution Tape. And of course, as always, fight on.